Well, hello again from Stamford Bridge, and hello again from this little patch of terrace where we're getting pretty used to this now, me walking up and down here reflecting on a Newcastle defeat. Now, before we go any further, I do want to put in a little bit of a disclaimer at the start, because a lot of what I talk about in this video might come across as negative or critical. What I'm looking for is the reasons as to how Newcastle can improve. 5 without a win now, down to 12th I think it is in the table as it stands. So yeah, there's issues there and we've got to explore them. But the disclaimer I want to make is that it wasn't the worst performance. I thought they were terrible for the first 15-20 minutes, but after that I thought they recovered. I thought they showed spirit. It was all a little bit disjointed, but nonetheless at the end, if they'd gone and nicked a point, it wouldn't have been a massive surprise. As much as I always thought Chelsea, if Newcastle had scored earlier, say if Isak had scored that chance on 75 minutes, I still do think Chelsea, and in particular Cole Palmer, probably would have had it within them to go up the other end and do something to correct that. You know, there was an inevitability about the outcome, but still, towards the end there, when Newcastle were pressing, if they managed to get it back to 2-2 from 85 minutes onwards, you're probably thinking that they are coming away from here with a point. So Eddie's just said to us downstairs, he thought they played well. Now, some of you might not agree with that. That might annoy one or two of you, because I know there is that emotion after a defeat. But I could see where he was coming from in that, given how badly they started, they actually did get to grips with things after that and found a way to be a threat, albeit, like I say, it was all a bit harem, scarum, scatter, going a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So that's the disclaimer. Okay, now onto the heavy stuff. And there's issues all over the park. We can talk about the guys at the back. We can talk about what's happening up front. But I started last season talking about Newcastle's midfield. I started this season talking about Newcastle's midfield. I was probably walking around somewhere in the summer talking about Newcastle's midfield. It's what I want to talk about here, because fundamentally for me, and I've always thought this across, I played midfield myself, you live and die by your midfield. Yes, the guys up front, they score the goals, the ones at the back, keep them out. But ultimately, the functionality of a team comes down to how your midfield is set up and what those players within it, how they perform. Right now for Newcastle, and last week and the week before, weeks before that, and the season before this, Newcastle's midfield has not worked consistently enough. That doesn't mean it hasn't worked at all, and it's got some fabulous players within there. Of course it has, but as a collective and the impact it has on those behind them and those in front of them, I don't think it's doing enough. Now, what Eddie Howe is playing with in there, and a lot of you guys say to me, when are you going to criticise Eddie Howe? Okay, again, another disclaimer. Eddie's brilliant, I think that, and in no way is this intended to put him under any pressure. The call is for Eddie to find a solution, because I think right now he's been stuck with this 4-3-3 system and wedded to it, and my call would be for that to change, for either the personnel or the system, whatever it is. Something's got to change in there. I'm not calling for a change of manager, not at all. I think Eddie is the man, but it's on him now to start to find some of these answers. Now I'm going to give my take. The midfield, it's 3-8s. Okay, sometimes Bruno is a hybrid 6-8. Tonali's been encouraged to push forward into this hybrid, false sort of inside 10. But fundamentally, I think they all want to play in there the same sort of position. It's not working. They're too flat. There's no variety, there's no real 6 and there's no 10 pushing on. Look at what Chelsea had today. They had 6s in there and they had Palmer, who did the job of a 6, 8 and a 10 at times. With Newcastle, I come back to the word, there's no variety. It's just so predictable and really one-paced in the middle. There's no speed in there. If anything, Bruno and Tonali are too slow. Bruno in particular, and you look at the individuals within that, okay, we'll work through them. Joelinton, I'm honestly now of the opinion that Joelinton is probably better off as a left winger. If we think back to his best for Newcastle during the last couple of seasons, yes, there's been performances in there when he's been that midfield destroyer, and has he shown himself under Eddie Howe to be capable of that? And when he's on song in that position, does he make a hell of a difference? Well, of course he does. I think he's tremendous when he's at his very best, but he hasn't been at his very best for a long time, and he certainly hasn't been at his best in that left hand of a midfield 3. I honestly think, and this isn't going to happen because Newcastle have already got Gordon and Barnes there, which again speaks to why did they sign Harvey Barnes. And I like Harvey Barnes, but why did they sign him? I'm on record enough times now not to shy away from that opinion. Joelinton could actually be better as a left winger towards the back end of 2 seasons ago, I think it was. When Newcastle did make it into the Champions League, after they'd signed Anthony Gordon, it wasn't Gordon who was playing in that position, it was Joelinton. He's just not doing it in the midfield right now. And if you want to keep the ball, if you want to dictate games, he's not the man for you in the middle there. He's just not good enough on the ball. Let's work through them. Bruno, I actually think after terrible start of the season when it looked like Bruno was towing 2 caravans instead of 1. I actually think he's been better the last few. He's been getting on the ball, he never hides, he's been taking responsibility. But there, in a game against Chelsea, up against Moses Caicedo, British record transfer, Cole Palmer's in there, most exciting player in the Premier League. Who shone? It wasn't Bruno. He did okay. It wasn't Bruno who grabbed the game and dictated. And that brings us on to Tonali. Now, Tonali, in theory, would be very good if he had a 6 behind him and a 10 in front of him, but he hasn't. He's playing in a midfield that I don't think he's necessarily suited to. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean you can't be doing more than what he's doing. Now, who do you blame for this? Do you blame the recruitment for bringing him in the first place? Do you blame Eddie Howe's use of him? Or do you blame the player himself? Now, he's not playing badly. Don't turn this into he's on it Tonali again. I'm just trying to wonder and find a reason as to how Newcastle get more from a £52 million midfielder who's an Italy international, who goes away and plays fabulously well for his country and comes back and plays okay for Newcastle. He's a 6, a 6.5, some weeks a 7, but only twice have we seen performances of what I believe he's capable and what I believe he should be doing. That was Aston Villa on his debut and Nottingham Forest on his comeback match. Now, he wasn't booed again, the substitution rather was booed again when he came off, the same as it was last week. And Eddie was asked about this twice in the press conference afterwards, and his reasoning for the change were, well, he's limited to a degree. You only take off so many players or put on so many players, and Tonali falls into one of those areas. If you want to get Joe Willock and Sean Longstaff on, Tonali probably is going to be one to come off. You might argue, don't do that, leave him on. That's fair. I can see the reason in giving Tonali's only just come back, leaving him on for longer, let him try to play his way into form. But also, players decide who comes on and who comes off. Ultimately, the manager doesn't. And that's what Eddie said, Sandro, if he wants to stay on, do more, There's still more to come from Sandro. There was a key quote at the end. It was my question there. And Eddie actually finished the press conference. He said, there's still more to come from Sandro. And there's got to be. You might want to defend him. And yes, he needs time. And yes, there's a fabulous player in there. But I'm still struggling to see again today what he brings and what he's meant to bring. I wrote the piece before he came back there. I'd spoken to loads of guys inside, outside, and they said to me that during the past year he's developed the hardest shot of the club. The keeper's palms are stinging when he's taking aim and training after the games. But to experience that, to feel that, he's got to shoot. He's got to have an effort on goal. And right now, we're just not seeing that. Is he picking passes? Is he playing balls around the corner for teammates to send them through goal? He's not. And it's all just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. What I come back to in the midfield as that collective just isn't functioning. And that, for me, is the key in the first place. Newcastle need to look at to arrest this current run that they're in. Now, what do they need in there? Well, they need someone like Elliot Anderson, except he, of course, has gone to Nottingham Forest. Now, yes, they need ingenuity, they need creation, they need imagination. Those three in there right now, they're all just sort of standing on top of each other at times. Tonali is trying to break the lines, but it's not really happening for him when he does that. And Cole Palmer today, actually, we've spoken quite a lot about that gap in between Newcastle's defence and the midfield. Well, Cole Palmer now has found another space, that is between Newcastle's midfield and the forward line. Now, to start the game, Newcastle had 5 in midfield, playing with Barnes on the left, Almiron on the right. They had 5 across the middle, yet for the first half hour, they didn't have a midfield. Chelsea were just playing through them, around them, over them, and it actually led to an argument between the guys at the back and those in midfield. And it came after Cole Palmer scored in the 5th minute. Again, just simple ball over the top. Palmer's away and free. And I think the point Fabian Schär and Dan Burn were making to those in front of them was, if we're being asked to play a little bit higher and that leaves us exposed in behind, well, it's up to you guys in midfield to put far more pressure on the ball and help us out. And it got a little bit heated there between Schär and Joelinton. Dan Burn had to step in. Bruno then got involved in the conversation. 5 minutes later, there was a break in play and Burn and Schär came over and just right down in front of us, they were deep in conversation with Eddie Howe saying this, well, I don't know, but it looked like, judging by the arm gestures and where they were pointing on the pitch, the midfield needs to do more to help them out, and I would go along with that. Now, Burn and Schär, they had a difficult afternoon there. Dan Burn got dragged all over, and for the opening goal, Nicholas Jackson, his lack of pace was exposed there. They're actually level when Palmer plays the brilliant ball in behind. Jackson then makes 10 yards on Burn and scores what's a relatively simple goal. Schär for Palmer's winning goal. What is he doing in backing off? Just make a challenge. Was he traumatised by the nutmeg in the first half? I don't know, but you've got to go and engage the player in that scenario. Nick Pope as well, beaten. Pope had a good game other than that, but the goal, crucially, he should probably do better for it. But the point I make is that Shea and Burn, their lack of pace, that's not their fault. Again, I said this to Eddie afterwards. It's not a criticism of them, but it means Newcastle can only play a certain way. It means they're limited in what they can do. That's the reason why they wanted to bring in a centre-half, Mark Gay, in the summer, who's got pace going back over and can carry the ball out. He's comfortable at doing that, engage in the midfield. Now, right now, Newcastle are hamstrung because of that lack of pace at the back. That comes back to recruitment, something else I've spoken about a hell of a lot recently. So, now, apologies for the slight interruption there and the change of location. Chelsea security staff have just got to grips with me better than Newcastle's players did with Nicholas Jackson and Cole Palmer, which is evidenced by I've got to wear my pass when I'm recording videos. So here we are. Let's carry on. And I was talking about the two centre-backs and how their lack of pace does affect the way Newcastle play. That is not a criticism of them, even though I think in the confines of the day they didn't have a great game. It's more just where recruitment has left Newcastle. That is another problem we can talk about. Going forward, let's jump beyond the midfield and into the attack. And Alexander Isak plays today there, after a lot of noise during the week about non-contract talks and everything like that, and the ambitions he might have to go and be a Champions League player, perhaps at a place like Chelsea. And Eddie Howe threw it back to Isak and others on Friday and said, if you want to be a Champions League player, go and play like one. Go and achieve it at Newcastle. That is the ideal world. That's the quickest way to get into the European competition you want, is to do it at the club you're currently employed at. Now Isak today, I'm reticent to have too much of a go because I think he kept on going. I don't think he hid. He wanted the ball. He scored a goal. He got himself in that position. And you could see there was that want and there was that will there to do well and to get involved. But a lot of the actual quality was missing, and it's Isak who was giving the ball away for Palmer's winning goal. He'd actually given the ball away in the first half in almost an identical incident right on halfway, and it needed a tackle from Dan Burn on Jackson. So the warning signs were there with Isak's performance early on. Was he trying too hard? I don't know. Is he not yet fully up to speed? Or is there some other issue there? We don't know. But in terms of an overall performance, and it was what captured it more than anything else, was the incident, like I said, I've touched on it earlier, towards the end there, 15 minutes to go, where he goes clear, Fofana tries to win the foul, ridiculous, goes down, Isak carries on, goes around the goalkeeper, but then rather than applying the finish or rolling to the far post for Joelinton, or back to Sean Longstaff, and I'd need to see a replay. I might be being harsh on him here, but it felt like he had options, and the better choice and avenue to explore was not what he eventually ended up doing, which was just continuing the dribble into bodies, and that chance has gone. And that was a really poor decision and captured what was a poor afternoon, really, I thought, for Isak on the whole. In his form, given that he is the only centre-forward available right now, Callum Wilson going to miss all of this week, perhaps even beyond. Willisula comes on at the end, clearly not ready to be trusted with anything more than 5 or 10 minutes. Isak's going to have to go again on Wednesday, and his form right now, to go with the issues I've spoken about in midfield and at the back, well, that would be a concern. Now, what is also a huge concern is that Anthony Gordon didn't play here today. He travelled down with the squad yesterday. He felt something in training before the travel, and there was word going around this morning that he could be missing. The hope was that he could make the bench. Before the game, he walked out just in front of us there, and we thought, okay, he has made the bench. Not so. It wasn't in the squad at all. He's got a groin injury. He's going to go for a scan tomorrow, and it probably won't be until Tuesday, when we speak to Eddie ahead of the game against Chelsea on Wednesday, that we know the extent of the injury. But goodness me, fingers crossed that is not serious, because you take Gordon out of that team and the quality from the wide areas just isn't there. We all know the issues on the right and the absence of quality in Newcastle's failure to address that position. Harvey Barnes came in again on the left today. I thought he did okay. I thought he was okay, but he's not Anthony Gordon at his best. And when you remove Gordon from the team, you remove so much. And I said before the game that I couldn't see a way of Newcastle getting anything here today. And during that opening 20-25 minutes, it had the feel of a 5-0. It wasn't in the end, and they do deserve credit for that. And there is something to take from that for Newcastle. That's what Eddie Howe wanted to stress afterwards. As long as the players are together and as long as they've got that spirit. But Newcastle are better than that. Newcastle should have more than that. The team who, of 2 seasons ago, they had spirit and they had quality and they had structure, they had guile, they had everything. If now you're back to talking about extracting positives with what stuck together and they kept going and they might have got something at the end there, well, that's not Newcastle United, and that really isn't good enough. And I think that is the point I would make coming away from here, that Eddie Howe has got so many different little issues in that team and in that squad to solve. Can he solve some of them without recruitment? Well, no, he can't, and that is why he's been let down by what's happened in the last 2 or 3 windows. But it's over to the manager now, because there's still another 10 games to go before the January window, starting with an absolutely huge one on Wednesday. And lose that, it might sound extreme to talk about seasons being over when you've still got the FA Cup, but I don't think we're watching a top 5 team there. I really don't. You've got that top 3 who have gone, and Newcastle aren't going to finish above Chelsea this season. There's 4. You throw Aston Villa into that as well. Perhaps even Spurs. I know Spurs lost today, but Newcastle are going to be finding it really difficult to threaten the Champions League. Beyond that, if you need the top 7 for Europe, again, they're down to 12th now. Something needs to change. And yes, January might be the answer down the line, but there's a lot of football to play between now and then. What does Eddie do? Does he change the personnel in midfield? Does he change the shape of midfield, the structure of it? I don't know. That's on him. But right now, for me, that would be the first port of call. Well, guys, I think you've heard just about enough from me for today. Thank you so much again for watching. Put your comments below the line. Do you agree with me about the midfield? What would you do? Are there other areas of greater concern? Now, I've got to the very end here, and I've just realised I haven't done the merit stars. Perhaps it felt like that sort of day. Now, yeah, I do have merit stars in mind, but I'm only going to give it to 2 players, really. And in ascending order, I'm going to go the 1 for Tino Livramento, because we've got to talk about Newcastle's goal. I thought, you know, that is Tino at his best, picking the ball up in deep, driving through the middle, and, you know, did well with his pass selection, little exchange with Joelinton, goes out wide. But I thought Tino Livramento, on his return here, gets 1 star. I'm not going to extend to 3 today. I'll give Tino 1. And I think the 2 goes to Lewis Hall as well. That was another encouraging performance. The 2 fullbacks coming back here. I thought they did well, and I thought Hall in particular showed quality on the ball, even if at times there was more aggression needed in the he got knocked off it once or twice, but that's where he's at in his development. He's a 20-year-old young fullback learning the position, but still, I thought Lewis Hall was good and probably deserves those 2 stars. Okay, so at the second attempt, I'm going to try to bid goodbye. I don't think there's anything else I have forgotten, but like I say, hit like, please subscribe. You know, if you watch the channel and you're not subscribed, it makes it easier. If you do hit that button, you get all of my videos straight into your feed, and you can put on the notifications as well. So yeah, guys, I'll give you one last little scan of stamp. That's easy. That's nicer on the green than the red, isn't it? But yeah, there you go, guys. And I'll see you again pretty shortly, actually, in a couple of days' time, when we'll be talking to Eddie, looking ahead to that absolutely massive game against the same opposition back at St James's on Wednesday night. Okay, take care. Goodbye.